impacted earwax. They've been using a lot of olive oil drops prior to attending upon our advice. Now, the challenging thing is that their ear is so narrow that a standard Zollner suction probe would not fit inside, so I'm using a fine end gauge. Now, because I've been using the drops, the surface of the wax, what we call the lateral edge of the wax, the bit that's facing us, is very soft and mushy. And you can see I'm just clearing out the entrance here. But the inner core, the medial distal plug of the wax was very hard and very impacted and very rough. The surface was rough, and you can see I'm just trying to literally wriggle this out of the ear. And this is a fine end gauge, by the way. This is the really small suction probe that we're using, and it just about fits in the ear, and I'm having to stretch the ear open just to gain access. So this is a full suction probe, so I thought let me just try it using a full suction probe here, but I just couldn't get it into the ear at all. And the patient's ear wasn't inflamed, it wasn't infected anyway. It's just, as a child, they got a really narrow ear. So again, I'm stretching the ear open, I'm using a fine end gauge, and I'm slowly just bringing this wax forwards, and here we are near the entrance. And when we're near the entrance, because the ear canal is so narrow, this plug of wax gets trapped, and it's like a tug of war. There was a lot of resistance actually when I was pulling this wax, and there's a bit of skin coating yet. And there'll be a moment you'll see where, I think it's just a bit further on, where when I'm moving this wax forwards and out of the ear, the child suddenly moved. I mean, you'll see that the movement on the camera. And at that stage, the child became a bit uncomfortable. He was crying slightly. So we knew something was going on, what was causing that. And once we removed the plug of wax, you'll see at the end of the video, this plug of wax, the end of it, so the bit that's towards the eardrum, was actually adhered to the eardrum itself. So there was a skin adhesion, the plug of wax had attached itself to the drum. And when we moved it off the drum, it became a bit uncomfortable for the child. And you'll see like a blistering there. So see just how, so we're near the entrance here, and this plug is extending all the way in the distance towards the eardrum, and we're just trying to wriggle this. And the child did fantastically well. So it's difficult with children because it's hard to keep them still, we have to keep repositioning them, but he was doing really well. You can see I'm bringing this forwards near the entrance, you can see all the cilia. And again, I'm just stretching the ear open, and those hairs tell you that we're near the entrance, and I'm just trying to get a suction grip here. And this plug was a lot firmer because obviously the drops wasn't really penetrating this deep in, and I'm just moving it left and right. And I think that's the moment where you saw suddenly the patient moved. So patient's a bit, at this stage, a bit uncomfortable, is very unsteady, started to cry, so his father was here, so we just kind of relaxed him. And what I asked the father to do at this stage is see if he can pull the ear back for me, just widen it so I can use the full sucker so it comes out quicker, but it didn't. And then when I went back in, you can see now there's a bit of blood around the edge. Again, the patient did so well, and it was so steady, and we're just bringing this forwards. So all this blood was seeping from the eardrum there. The wax plug initially had detached itself. Again, it's almost hanging out the ear at the moment, this wax. It's really tricky, but because the child was so still, that's the key. I mean, a lot of children do struggle, especially obviously because they found it slightly uncomfortable, but he's still very still. And we're just reassuring him all the time. He was a bit unsteady here, I think, naturally. There we are, and I'm just bringing this through. Again, I'm just stretching the ears wide open as I can. And you can see I've just brought that out, and it came out in a big cigar piece, and you'll see a close-up in a minute. So we're just going back in the ear and just going to mop up around the entrance, just so we get a better view. So all the ear canal's fine. Now the eardrum, you'll see in the middle, that's where the skin probably detached itself from there. So it's almost like a blister. And the eardrum was a bit red, so we did do a pressure test, a tympanometry, just to make sure there's no glue in, and that came fine. And the patient was hearing much better afterwards. And this is the tip of the wax plug. That was the bit that was attached to the eardrum. You can see the bit of skin around there. And you can see there's the bit of skin, a bit of blood on that. So that's the bit that we detached from the eardrum. And So with children, it's always very complex. I do enjoy the complex ones, as you know. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. It's something different. And you can see, obviously, the real challenges when you perform earwax with children, especially when they've got really, really narrow ears. And that's probably as narrow as someone's ear will get. As a preventative measure, I've advised the father, say, because you've got a narrow ear like this, you are prone to having wax build up again. So obviously the big no cotton buds, no water in the ear. And I've just advised the patient's father to use ear roll and olive oil spray in the UK. I'm sure you get equivalents around the world, but in the UK it's a spray called ear roll. It's easy to use, and just to use that once a fortnight, once a month maybe, just to soften any wax, and then you can just tilt the child's head to the side just to drain it, because water's bad. So in a way we're using oil to rinse the ear out. And even if the wax doesn't get rinsed out, at least it's soft, so it's a bit easier to remove. That was really hard and it did, and you had skin adhesions against the drum.